Okay, so in this video here, we're just going to try and work on some lighting. So at the moment we're in rendered mode here, and we can see our character, and he looks, he looks okay. So I want to give him some sort of, like, the project you have is to have a walk cycle in an environment. You're marked on lights and on animation. So I'm going to make a plane and scale it up, I don't know, by 4. So I have some sort of space to be in. Now the character's going to walk on the spot, so we don't need to have too enormous an environment. We'll maybe scale it up by 2. And we're going to unwrap this, although actually there's no need to do that because the default cube is already unwrapped, as we can see here. So we'll go down here, and we've only one material, which we should probably rename. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to hit new, and I'm going to call this ground. And we are going to go to shading and look at the ground. And I don't need that guy. So here I'm going to load in an image texture. I'm going to open up some images. So we have this here, which we've used a little bit on the character. So this will sort of fit in terms of its color scheme. So I'm going to open that and bring that in as the base color. We'll worry about the scale of it in a minute. And I'm going to go Shift D and put that over here and open this, and we're going to bring in a spec map and put that into specularity, and then finally we will bring in another image texture. Where'd that go? Image. What am I doing wrong here? Image texture. Add brick texture. Yeah, I can add in a brick texture. Can I add in an image texture? I can. I don't know what happened there. Bizarre. Okay, open, and we want to bring in the normal map. So there's my normal map. I'm going to open that, and then we need to say it's not color, and we need to add in a vector normal map converter, so we can go from color to vector. And there's our normal map, and we'll worry about how strong that is in a minute. Now, so he's walking on the ground, that's fine. But the ground is not, no, the scale is wrong. So we have all sorts of things we can do here. I can scale this here, make it much smaller, and then duplicate it, but then I'd end up with lots more geometry, so I don't want to do that. I can, if I want, I can add in an input, and I can go to where is mapping? It's in vector, that's why I can't find it. So you can see these are all vector inputs. So if I take this and I put it into all of these guys, I can actually, stipulate scale and all sorts of things. Do all that, but I'm not going to do any of that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go and just scale it on UVs. So I'll select all my verts here, all 4 of them. I can go scale 2, that's twice as big. I can go scale 2 again. Now we're starting to see a repeat pattern here, which is not great. And then we'll scale it one more time. Scale 2. Now, so that's not terribly good because we can see the repeat pattern in it. So let's see if we can break that up a bit. So let's go in here to edge and go subdivide, and we will subdivide it, I don't know, 10 times, and we will try and go into our proportional editing, and we'll just make it not completely uniform, and that will help a little bit. Okay, keeping in mind that because he's not moving forward, we have to get the biddies on to look good. Okay, so we have that. And we have choices now, so I could add loads of geometry in, which is what I intend to do, and make a displacement map and see if we can displace the image and make it more three-dimensional. So let's have a look at doing that. So I can go here and I can put in a displace modifier, and then from the displace modifier I can jump here. I see I've got a displacement. I can go new. So what image am I going to use for displacement? I'm going to click open, and this one came with a displacement image, so I'm going to use that one. You can see it's gone bananas. I'm going to go back to my modifier, and I'll set the strength to say 0.1, but fundamentally the problem here is I don't have enough geometry. So let's fix that. So I'm going to add a multi-resolution modifier, and I'm going to go subdivide and subdivide and subdivide. So I've subdivided this a good few times, and actually lift it up in the stack so that it's subdivided before the displacement modifier is added to it. You can see it's already made a big difference. So I'm going to subdivide it again to 4. And the more I subdivide, the more it will displace with more accuracy to the image. Okay, and we'll do one more. Maybe one more. Let's see if we can. Let's save it first before we start making billions or millions of verts anyway. Okay, so that's not too bad. So at the moment that's my camera. I'm not terribly interested in that camera position. So I'm going to, let's go back to modeling here and look to our camera. We'll hit N and we'll go to view and lock camera to view, and we'll move this around a little bit so we can see our character moving towards us. So that landscape looks much better now. It doesn't really look like a repeat pattern. I'm sure if we look closely we'll see it, but that's not too bad at all. And the next thing I want to do is so there's a few things I want to do here that'll kind of definitely make everything look a little bit better. So I'm going to add in an empty. I'm just going to lift it up and move it forward till it's roughly where the head is. And I'm going to rename this empty. I'm going to call it focus. And while I'm here naming things, I'm going to call this the ground, so I know what I'm dealing with. Now, in my settings here, I have got a thing called depth of field. So I'm going to go to my camera. I'm going to turn on depth of field for my camera. So depth of field. Let's look through the camera. So depth of field is basically the area that's in focus, and I can pick an object to focus on. So I'm going to call my focus object the object I'm going to focus on, and then when I change this number here, you can see that some of the image will be in focus and some of it will be out of focus. It's purely sort of just an aesthetic, so you can decide what you want to be in focus. Now if I go GY, I can move this focus point, so the focus point's kind of behind the camera, everything's out of focus, and he's in focus, his face, and now his face is out of focus, and yeah, you can see it moving there. Cool. So that'll help us as well to sort of literally focus the eye of the viewer, to tell them what we want them to look at. So in this instance we want them to look at the troll's face. So that's good, so we'll save that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a cube, and I'm going to scale it on Y, and I'm going to scale it on X, and I'm going to go into edit mode and select just the top and go GZ, and oh, I've got proportional editing on, GZ, move it up there. Now very good. We can actually scale it down, we don't need it to be that big. Cool. So I'm actually going to take these here and move it towards the camera. So what is this? Why is that there? So we're going to make a fog. It's for so I'm going to go fog. So I'm going to make a material called fog, and I'm going to go to shading, and so this is the generic material. Delete that. I'm going to add in a shader called a volume scatter shader, and instead of plugging it to surface, I'm going to go into volume. And you can see here I've got kind of a fog. I'm going to go back to, oh, well, actually, we'll have a look here. So I'll look through the camera. So it's very important to look through the camera, because what the camera sees is not necessarily what you see out here in the 3D port. So that's too dense, I can't see my character. So I can lighten up the density of the fog as he's walking through it. I can change maybe the color of the fog, make it a bit more kind of orangey. And this is you can see it's sort of going to give me like how much sort of, you can see it at a higher value here, it's more centered around light, whereas here it sort of dissipates more. The fog is more consistent throughout. So I like the look of that. Okay, so let's go back to modeling and look through here and come out of so that's currently what we look like now. In we're in the Eevee render engine. So Eevee has a bloom, so we could do quite interesting things with blooms. Got ambient occlusion, which will help make dark bits darker and bright bits brighter. It's going to help with contrast. We've got screen space reflections and motion blur if we want it. So I'm just going to turn all of them on. Now I'm not going to use most of them, but just so they're on. And then if for some reason you didn't have this turned on, your volumetric lighting wouldn't work. So this is our, you know, our character. And if we want to, so I'm kind of nearly finished now. So maybe we can see the sun in the sky. I don't know. You can decide how these are sort of aesthetic decisions as to what you can see, what you can't see, how you want the character to look. So obviously this light is in front of the character, so we could do all sorts of funky stuff. We could put the light behind the character and turn him into some sort of, you know, evil silhouette. So you have all sorts of interesting choices as to how you want your scene to look. So if I press F12 and render that, and it's rendering on my other monitor, and there we go. So something from Scooby-Doo. But the ground texture looks good. Not brilliant, but good. And let's not do that with the light, and light them from in front, and reduce the power of that. And actually, no, we'll leave the specularity up. We will turn off bloom. Let's move the light off frame, but increase how bright it is. And then I'm going to reduce the density of the fog. So 0.01. 0.5. So let's toggle that on and off. So and that's not what I expected. Okay, and okay, so that's a little bit better. Okay. So all I'm doing now is having a play and seeing how I want to change the character and change the lighting. So your project that you're going to do for me requires you to take a character like this troll here and to put it in an environment and have some atmospheric lighting. And you can decide what that atmospheric lighting is or how it should look. Now the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to my world settings. So my world is set to be grey, it has a strength of 1, so I'm just going to turn off all my world lighting and then have a play with lighting this guy from a spotlight and see what we get. I will save that and then we'll hit play. See him walking through, and that's quite, so the lighting and that's quite dynamic, so we can see shadows moving, areas being sort of exposed. He's also moving through sort of focus as well, and because we're in a spotlight we've got sort of areas we can't see and whatnot. So that looks quite good. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, it's not the best model or environment, but you can kind of get an idea of what I'm sort of looking for you to kind of produce in your own work, and to have a play and see what you can come up with. The last thing I will do, although I won't include it in this, is I will give him eyes. So I'll unwrap his eyes. Well, they're spheres, generic spheres, so they'll be unwrapped already. So I'll just find an eye texture and put them on. Okay, we'll leave it there for now.